Claire had always been someone who believed in love, real, lasting love. When she met Noah 6 years ago, something inside her told her he was the one. They had moved in together after only a year, blending their worlds together so seamlessly that it seemed like fate. They were a team, inseparable, supporting each other through thick and thin. Or so Claire thought. It was the little things at first, a few too many late nights at the office. The way Noah would glance at his phone with a sudden, sharp focus, as if he were hiding something. But Claire brushed it all aside. They were just busy. Life was hectic. There were deadlines, pressures, and goals to meet. They both had dreams they were chasing. But lately, something had changed. The air between them had shifted, imperceptible at first, like a shadow that slowly crept in, darkening their once vibrant connection. Noah was no longer the man she had known so well. He came home late, ate dinner without conversation, and fell asleep on the couch, the television flickering in the background as if it were a metaphor for their relationship, fading, disconnected. Claire noticed that he no longer held her hand when they walked down the street or kissed her like he used to. They barely touched, and the silence between them grew louder. It was as though the small intimacies that once defined their connection had vanished without a trace. One evening, after a particularly cold dinner, Claire went to bed alone. She stared at the ceiling, her mind racing with unanswered questions. Why was he pulling away? Was it her? Had she done something wrong? The next morning, Noah kissed her on the forehead as he left for work. His words were gentle, almost rehearsed, but there was a lack of warmth in his voice. "I'll be late again tonight. Don't wait up." Claire nodded, forcing a smile. "Okay, Noah. See you later." She felt the familiar pang of loneliness settle in her chest, but she pushed it aside. It was just a phase. They were both under a lot of stress. Everything would be fine. But deep inside, she knew that it wouldn't. The phone call came just after dinner. Claire had been tidying up the kitchen when she heard Noah's phone buzz across the counter. A name she didn't recognize flashed on the screen. Mia. She froze, her heart beating erratically in her chest. Mia. Who was that? She couldn't ignore the feeling of dread that washed over her. She had never heard of a Mia before, and Noah had never mentioned anyone by that name. Her hands trembled as she reached for his phone. The temptation was too great, and before she could stop herself, Claire unlocked it and opened the message. "I'm thinking about you." The words hit her like a slap to the face. A deep, guttural instinct inside her told her this was no coincidence. She scrolled down further, her breath shallow and ragged. The conversations were flirtatious, intimate, things Claire had never heard between them. She felt like an intruder into a world she never knew existed. There were no apologies, no hesitation, just a rawness that felt foreign to her. "I miss you so much, Noah. Last night was amazing." She couldn't breathe. She didn't want to see more, but she couldn't stop herself. She kept scrolling, reading every word, every confession, every plan to meet up. It wasn't just a one-time slip. It was ongoing, a secret world that Noah had built right under her nose. And in that world, there was no room for Claire. Her hands shook as she placed the phone back on the counter. The kitchen around her suddenly felt too small, too cold. Her body felt like it was on fire, her emotions a whirlwind of hurt, betrayal, and disbelief. Noah had been cheating on her. The man she had loved, the man she had trusted with everything, had been lying to her, sneaking around with someone else. The realization hit her like a wave crashing against the shore, leaving her breathless and broken. As the night wore on, Claire couldn't sleep. She lay awake in their bed, Noah's absence beside her, an unbearable emptiness. She replayed every moment she had shared with him, trying to find the cracks she had missed. She thought of the vacations, the anniversaries, the quiet nights spent in each other's company. How could it all have been a lie? The next morning, Claire barely recognized the woman who stared back at her in the mirror. Her eyes were red from lack of sleep, her face pale and drawn. But there was something else in her gaze, something hard, something unyielding. She wasn't the same woman who had believed in Noah's love. Noah came home that evening, just like he always did. He tossed his keys on the counter and greeted her with a kiss on the cheek. But Claire didn't respond. She stood in the kitchen, her back to him, her body stiff with tension. "Noah," she said, her voice low but steady, "I know about Mia." The silence that followed was deafening. Noah froze, his face draining of color. He didn't speak for a moment, as if trying to gather his thoughts, but Claire could see the guilt written all over him. His eyes couldn't meet hers. "Claire, please," he started, his voice shaky. "I never meant for you to find out this way." "Did you ever mean for me to find out at all?" Claire asked, her voice cutting through the tension like a knife. She turned to face him, her hands trembling at her sides. "I didn't want to hurt you. I don't know what happened. It just happened," Noah stammered, his words meaningless in the face of her pain. Claire laughed bitterly. "It just happened. Do you think I'm stupid, Noah? You've been seeing her behind my back for who knows how long, and now you're standing here, trying to explain it away with "it just happened." She shook her head, the weight of the betrayal sinking deeper with every word. "You've been lying to me, and now you expect me to just forgive you? Pretend everything's okay." Noah stepped forward, his hands outstretched, but Claire recoiled, the air between them thick with anger and hurt. "I'm sorry, Claire. I'm so sorry. It was a mistake. I never wanted to hurt you." But the words were hollow. The damage was done. Claire had given him everything, and he had given her nothing but lies. She took a deep breath, trying to steady her shaking hands. "I don't think I can do this anymore, Noah. I can't live in a relationship where trust is shattered beyond repair." Days turned into weeks, and the silence between Claire and Noah became unbearable. He begged for forgiveness, sending her flowers, leaving apologetic notes, and even showing up at her work unannounced, but Claire couldn't bring herself to even look at him. She had been betrayed in a way that felt like it had torn her apart. The love she once had for him was replaced by a raw, bitter rage. At night, she would sit on the couch, the lights dim, trying to process everything that had happened. It was hard to explain the mix of emotions swirling inside her. She wasn't sure if she was more angry at Noah or at herself for not seeing the signs earlier. Her heart ached for the life they had shared, the future they had planned. One evening, Noah came to her, his eyes full of desperation. "Please, Claire," he pleaded. "I know I've hurt you, but I love you. You're everything to me. I made a mistake. I'm begging you to give me another chance." But Claire knew that the love she once felt for him was gone. It wasn't just about the affair. It was the lies, the emotional neglect, the way he had distanced himself from her when she needed him the most. She couldn't go back to that. She had to move on, for her own sake. After weeks of soul-searching, Claire made a decision. She would leave. She packed her things while Noah was out, the weight of each item seeming to carry more emotional baggage than she could ever have imagined. The bed they had shared, the couch where they had spent lazy Sundays together, all of it felt like a memory she had to leave behind. When Noah returned that evening, he found the apartment empty. There was a note on the kitchen counter. "I'm sorry, but I can't do this anymore. Goodbye, Noah." She didn't look back, not once. Claire found herself alone, but for the first time in months, she felt free. The pain was still there, a dull ache in her chest, but she knew that walking away from Noah was the only way she could begin to heal. She spent the next few months focusing on herself, rediscovering her passions, reconnecting with friends, and slowly rebuilding her life. It had been a year since Claire left Noah. She had started a new life, one filled with purpose and independence. But one day, as she walked into her favorite cafe, she saw him, Noah. He was sitting at a table by the window, his eyes scanning the room. He looked older, more tired than she remembered, but his gaze met hers, and for a split second, the world seemed to pause. He stood up when he saw her. "Claire," he said softly, his voice tinged with regret. She took a deep breath, her heart still carrying the weight of the past. "Noah," she replied, her voice steady. There was no anger now, no bitterness, only a quiet, painful understanding. "How have you been?" Noah smiled weakly, his eyes filled with something Claire couldn't quite read. "I've been trying to make things right, with myself. I miss you." Claire's lips trembled, but she quickly composed herself. "I miss who I thought you were, Noah. But that's not who you are anymore. I've moved on, and I think it's time you did too." They shared a brief, tense silence before Claire nodded and turned to leave. She didn't feel the need for closure anymore. She had already found peace. As she stepped out of the cafe, she felt the weight lift from her shoulders. She was no longer the woman who had been broken by betrayal. She was someone new, stronger, wiser, and ready for whatever the future would bring.